Welcome to Films in Black and White, everybody. Welcome to Films in Black and White, everybody. How are you all feeling? It is a momentous occasion. It is a great day. Not just because the orange meanie is joining us live.
Oh, wow.
It is joining us live in our live stream.
Wow.
But it is also because, gentlemen, we are celebrating our 100th episode today. This episode is number 100, and
100.
it is a great day.
It's about goddamn time.
I know, right? Like it feels weird to say that, but also accurate.
Yeah.
There you go.
But gentlemen, I want to make sure you all feel thoroughly welcomed into this space. So I'm going to kick it on over to the orange man himself, one Marcus J. Destin. Marcus, how you feeling?
That's my name. Listen, I'm here. It's the 100th episode. We have been waiting for this moment ever since we found out we was like 6 episodes away.
Yep.
And now it's like super real. I had to go in my closet and find all of the orange that I possibly could properly celebrate. So yes.
I love the vibe. I love the orange vibe. It is exactly what I wanted. So I'm so glad that you brought that energy.
It was either this or all black for Black History Month because Black on.
Black History Year, Marcus. It is not just Black Month History Month.
The name of the group chat.
People think at 12 a.m. that it's over, but in fact, my black intensifies times 10.
Yeah. I mean, by the time we get to December 31st, you're going to be the blackest of black possible with the way that works.
Celebrating too.
Oh, that musical cue.
This is great. But we also have to make sure that we have our third heat. And so I'm going to kick it on over to one Brian Roush. Brian Roush, how you feeling?
Folks, it's great to be here. It's fantastic to be here. I've been thinking about this all day. I'm like, what am I gonna say? Like, there's
right?
A lot, but the idea that there's 100 episodes of this podcast in the world, that's just great.
It is. It's a great. And I was also asking. I was asking myself similar questions, Brian, where I was like, what am I going to say? And then I also kind of thought back like, well, I guess I can't run for office because there's 100 episodes of this out there. It's not just I was on one.
I mean, like, there's just so many things that have been said by you that,
true.
There's a lot that could happen, but, I think it's possible you could still run for office.
I think the only one who's
keep you from running for office.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe some of the
sure at that January 6th insurrection, there are going to be some people in the future that are going to be running from office.
That's also very true.
They're full in attendance.
So I'll actually, be the lesser.
It's going to be for something like we totally will never dream of, but it's going to be like, did you know Doug Wagner likes the Eternals?
Oh my God.
It's like
not
to black and white. And it's a slow zoom into Doug's face. And it's like, he thought the movie had good things.
Right.
As his opponent. That's what I feel like.
That guy out of here.
Right, exactly. But gentlemen, it is our 100th episode, and it is a great time for us to celebrate. And I want to put this out there for our listeners and viewers that this episode is going to be a little bit different because we are going to do some reminiscing. We are going to put on our walking shoes and take a walk back to when this started and just kind of reflect on the past 100 episodes because you know what? It would be irresponsible not to.
I had music queued up. Hold on. Sorry. Give me a second.
Please. Ooh.
No lyrics because of copyright reasons. But
I'm
this is
so glad this is it.
if you know the title, it's 0 to 100 by Drake. But
I love it.
Real
it
fucking
makes
quick.
more sense in my head. But
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm singing it in my head, so you're fine.
0 to 100.
Yeah, real quick.
I love it.
But gentlemen, I want to start us off here. I want to start off with this question because I'm very curious about what your thoughts are. You know, Brian, you kind of alluded to it already, but reflecting on 100 episodes for you all individually, what does this milestone mean for you all? And what's sort of we're not doing slowly, we're jumping right in. So what for you all, what's this milestone mean for you all as you kind of reflect back on 100 episodes?
Wow. That honestly, for me, I think for those that know or don't know, I was not a original podcaster, original co-host of this podcast. I was brought in after Artemis Fowl, which we will absolutely touch on. So
yes,
the idea I get to be part of this legacy of 100 episodes, that's just really cool because it is something that we were consistent with, and we kept trying to bring in new ideas that we didn't hear in the stuff that of the critiques and analysis that we see online. We wanted to at least bring more of that cultural lens to so many of these topics, and I feel like we have been more successful than we haven't. And then on top of it, never in my wildest dreams did I think we would have any of the guests on this show that we have had.
God,
and that has just been a highlight in itself.
Right. That is such a good point. And I want Marcus to kind of go but that I'm going to touch on some similar points for sure. So Marcus, 100 episodes.
Brian worded it. I mean, that's perfectly. True. Sorry, go ahead. Finish your you're hosting. Yeah, you're guiding us. I
am. Right. And so here's what you and I originally set out on this.
Yes.
And back in January it feels weird to say, but in January of 2020. Yeah. It was a very different world when we started this podcast.
Just listen to the pod.
It was a very different world than when we started this podcast back in 2020.
It almost feels like variants of ourselves if we like look back on it. Like, that was not us. It feels so weird now, but
yeah, very, very different. You and I both had different jobs at the time.
We did.
We were going out in public at the time. I remember in that like sort of weird like 2-month period where we took a little hiatus as things got busy. We went to a whole goddamn basketball tournament with 10,000 people like in March of 2020, and I
shook hands with 500 of those people personally.
Wow.
Yep.
And if you had told somebody like, hey, I shook hands with 500 people, they'd be like, get the fuck out of here. Like right now, like, I don't want to see you. I don't want to talk to you. Get out of here. So
as soon as I got home, I said, oh my God, I have it. I don't know what it is exactly, but I have it.
Yeah, they brought us into a room to talk about what was going to happen from the student services perspective. And I remember sitting there being like, I've gotten everyone in here sick because of where I just was right now.
Jeez. Oh my God.
Good times.
Great times. But Marcus, do you remember like when just sort of like recording that first episode? Do you remember some of that, like, and then just that again for you, 100 episodes, what's that mean for you type stuff?
Man, I do remember the first episode because I remember the original conception of the idea of us just sitting at the desk. I'm working for Doug, and we got to this point where we would just literally just talk movies, comics, podcasts, and all this other stuff. Had no idea that Doug was also interested in kind of stuff. And there's a difference between, I watch Marvel movies, because now that's like a conversation starter.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. But then there's I actually read the comic books. I'm familiar with the characters, and I am, then you get involved into the Marvel universe that's being created. Right. So to see that was like a common thread that we had between us, that was already dope. So then I remember the first episode we recorded, and it was just hilarious to go back and listen to this past week.
Yes, it was incredible.
It was funny because of the shit we've said and predicted and didn't predict correctly.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
It was all over the place.
No, you're right. And It's so funny. I think it's so funny because if you had come to me now and said like, hey, I want you to record in like a super echoey office and you're only going to use a phone to get your audio, I'd be like, then I'm
Oh
not
my
going to
gosh.
do it because it's going to
Yeah.
sound terrible. But at the time I was like, hey, I'm just excited. Let's just get after it. Let's just start.
go.
Like, there was no like, it's funny. Like, so Brian's described me as like unpredictable Anakin energy that I
Yes.
bring to a lot
In
of
the
things.
best way possible.
In the most wholesome way possible.
Yes.
But I remember that for the first like 3 months that we did this, that's all that this was.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It was like, I'm not going to do research.
We didn't do any research. We came
No.
in with just our basic common knowledge and then just hit record.
Yep.
Yep.
And I literally would say, like, I didn't do any research on how to market. We didn't have like anything going. It was just like, turn the mic on, let's just go. And now looking back on it, there are so many more things that need to that go into what happens day in and day out.
But I think that it kind of ties into a point I'll make later. When hitting 100 episodes means that, like Brian said, we were consistent. Because at first we were like we were on and off a lot.
Yeah.
And then we were really comparing our podcast to like I was the Joe Budden podcast, right?
Oh my gosh.
And so we were like, oh, how many episodes can we do a week? You know, that's kind of how we got the Patreon idea, and it was pretty crazy. Appreciate you, Jacob Wood.
Thank you, Jake.
Oh, God.
Youngling killing energy. Let's go.
Jake,
I mean,
I just want to put this out there. That he was Darth Vader when that happened. Okay, he was a different person. I know you know this, but I need to clarify this for the audience that is listening. Jacob Wood, treasured friend. We appreciate you.
I've never seen somebody say "youngling killing energy" and then say "let's go." Like that's a
true.
no-no. That's a no-no, Jacob. We can't do that. We don't support that here.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's incredible.
But yeah, it said a lot about, hitting 100 means we have something that is our own. And then like we don't even brag as much as we should be about how many listeners we have and our growth and how many people actually listen to us without us having to beg and plead anybody to listen. Like we don't really market as much as we should. Like we don't advertise and push ourselves to friends and family, at least on my end, as much as I should.
There was a point in time when I joined the podcast where Doug Wagner had I think it was Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, but had an entire Google Calendar that had like this quote of the day posted, then the recipes here, and it was like something every day. And I was like, wow, this is like an operation here. And now we've tapered off on like some of that, and we have a lot of this authentic stuff coming out, which is also great. So like it has been such a wild and wonderful transformation.
I remember those moments where we like talked about those and we like drove those. Like I remember when that whole stuff came into conception. And Marcus, it was right before we did was it October of 2020 that we decided to do an entire series of movies that talked about like African American history or the history of civil rights in the country? Was that October or November?
I think it was June.
Oh, was it?
I thought it was.
It felt like it was
I thought I'll look it up.
Yeah. It's like it was
more than a movie, right?
Yeah, the More Than Movie series.
I'll find it.
Yeah, I remember we watched. I'm gonna get you, sucker, which was amazing. I'm so glad that I saw that because that was one of those movies that I would like walk by on in the video store and would never pick up. So I'm really glad that I finally watched that.
We had Lamont on for that episode.
Had your dad on,
and it was good. It was so weird because we didn't think we'd be hitting this point. I'm not gonna say that. What we did was it did feel like we were really, really trying to do certain stuff, like the snack thing, and these are great ways we thought we're getting people involved. But at the end of the day, kind of where we are now, not at the end of the day, where we are now is presenting our authentic self. For example, Doug's TikTok. That is 100% Doug Wagner's personality. And you would think that we're just gonna make some fun videos until Doug hits like 3 million views on a video just from his own personality. So us presenting our authentic self pulled in more people, because all we were doing were just talking like three regular guys that just love movies or just saw a movie and just were like shooting the shit. And that's what made it like dope as hell.
Right, for sure. And I think that's the other thing that I think I've appreciated about it as we kind of carried through is that thread has sort of remained common throughout, is that we've never gotten too far away from this, like, let's not take this too seriously, let's put it through our own lens and tell our own story through what we're watching, because that's such an important conversation to have. And I think a lot of people like to put movies through this conversation of what their impact is on pop culture or society, and sometimes those individual voices get left behind. So I think that that's a good point. So,
and I do want to say real quick, July 2020 was when you started the More Than a Movie series, and yes, you started with "I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker" by Keenan Ivory White.
We did. We tried to record that on our phone to get some video footage.
With guest Lamont Sellers.
I remember that. We tried to set. We had this like. Shout out to Lamont. We had this janky ass setup in my basement. We were like, how are we gonna get the video? Oh fuck, I don't know. Should we do it in the same room? Yeah, but I don't know how we're gonna do it. Like
one mic, I had headphones on. Doug did not have headphones on.
Oh,
he can only hear through my headphones what was being said, and it was a whole thing. One computer started updating in the middle of the podcast.
Yeah, it was great. It was really great.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, it was a whole.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
We have come a long way in terms of our operation and what this has looked like, because it used to be the podcast was recorded on hopes and dreams, and that was about it. That was about it. I do want to talk about like the important moment of bringing Brian into the podcast, because I think that's where a certain sense of completion came into it. Because Brian, did we have you on for Artemis Fowl first, or did we have you on to do news first, then Artemis Fowl second?
Man, I need to double check. I'm pretty sure it was Artemis Fowl. I'm very confident about this, because I'm very confident about this. Because we talked about Tenet afterwards, because that was when Tenet started being in the marketing cycle, was when I did my news episode with y'all.
Yes, that's very accurate. God, that's very accurate. And I remember that podcast was like a turning point for us, because it was the first, I think, bad movie that we had done. Like, we didn't know that it was going to be bad, but up until that point, Marcus and I had talked about like we got to stop at just fucking like agreeing with each other for 45 minutes and then going home. Like, because much of the format for this podcast up until that point was like, oh man, that was really great. And then Marcus or I would be like, yeah, and you remember that other part? Really cool. Well, I liked it. And we just kind of call it a day.
I remember after the Artemis Fowl episode, I don't want to get too far because I think we have a clip.
No, you're good.
I remember from the Artemis Fowl episode, which is one of my favorites, because it was the first time meeting Brian. And like, you know, when you have guests on, you just never know how shit is going to go.
You do not.
And Doug knew Brian, and I did not know Brian. So I just thought it was going to be like this kind of awkward, like, we'll talk to each other and Marcus will just chime in and be like, hell yeah, and then leave. So,
not how I roll.
No, not at all. And it didn't feel like that. So after the episode was over, it was such great chemistry. I go to Doug's office, and I think it may have been 2 days after the episode came out. I was like, because I was so afraid. I was like, I don't want Doug to think that I don't want to do this with him and me. With just him and me. I don't want Doug to feel like I'm like, we're trying to replace it or make it not a us thing.
Right.
So I walk in the office and I'm like, okay, Doug, tell me if I'm stupid. But I feel like Brian would be a great third wheel. Like, he would be a great third person to add to the podcast, because like the chemistry was just crazy. And then Doug walks, he's like, I was thinking the same fucking thing, man. Like, crazy. He said it was so good.
Brian doesn't know this, but we talked about the vibe Brian brought to the podcast for the better part of a day and a half. Like, we would be doing something. We would do something like work related, and we would be like, okay, and then I think we should plan this event. It's like, oh yeah, and then we'll get this food, and then I'd be like, fuck, he just does his research too. Like, he doesn't show up half-assed. Like.
When we mentioned earlier about us just showing up and talking, that was the first time Brian was on the podcast for the first time. and Googling and was prepared with
Hey.
information.
Look,
It'd be the littlest shit that just blew our fucking mind.
Yeah. And we were like, how does he know that? And then I think on the Artemis Fowls episode, he goes, yeah, and I talked to some people who read the book. I was like, you talked to fucking other people before you showed up to this space?
My dumb ass like, there was a book? I was like, oh my God. This guy does his research.
Yeah.
Well, you invited me to talk about the movie, and I was like, okay, like I've listened to a few episodes, but like I gotta like I don't want to just show up and be like, hey, this movie was bad, and like then just like peace out and like I don't know. I was like, no, like I wanna at least like take it seriously or whatever. And then like, oh my gosh, that I mean, obviously go back to that episode and listen to it because that movie's just bonkers.
Right. It is bonkers.
But it was just it felt like coming home because it for me watching movies, I was always like, I watched this movie and now I want to talk about it. And like a lot of the time, I don't have like my wife, my lovely wife Maggie talks to me about movies and she's fantastic, but she's good after like, yeah, it was good. I enjoyed this theme, and I'm like, yeah. So this weird thing with the leprechaun, though, we need to break this down.
Can we talk about the guy that eats dirt just for a hot second? Mo Diggum
exactly.
For a minute?
Yes. 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 Olaf, eating dirt, having to come out the other side. I had to process that with some great gentlemen here, and it felt like home. It felt like this awesome place where I could just talk about all these weird things. And here we are 100 episodes in.
For sure. And then the other thing is then Marcus and I had to figure out like, how do we woo Brian, but not like come on too strong.
Yes.
So
it was like trying to go on a first date.
It was very much for first date energy of like, how do we get him into this? But like, I don't want to scare him away. So even like, I remember sitting on my deck in like August and being like, well, Brian, like, I know you got 2 kids and hey, let's start out with 3 episodes. If you like that, we'll do 9.
Yeah.
And if you like that, maybe we'll just have you be permanent. Yeah. And he was yeah, I think we could do that. And I remember like getting off the phone, going into my house and being like, he's in, like looking at Brittany as if he was ready to rob a bank. Like he fucking said, yes, let's do this.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
We got him. We did it, Joe. We did it, Joe.
We did it, Joe. No, seriously. It was like, I remember Brian coming on the beginning of the episode and was like, we'll try it out and we'll see what things are going on. Because,
we
never
didn't brought it up again.
Never brought it up again because it was like, why would I stop doing this? Like,
we never
rad as hell.
So that was one of my favorite moments was finding a trio because me and Doug, for the most part, we're going to talk and agree on stuff, or we can convince each other to see each other's points. And that was also the other thing was like, well, what about this? And Doug will be like, And sometimes I think Doug will agree because I'm black and he'll be like, you know what? I don't really, I respect it, but don't really fully understand it, but you got it. And I'll be like, thank you, Mr. White Man. I appreciate
you. Yep.
We needed somebody who wasn't just going to roll.
No, you pinpointed it. You've got it. That's exactly.
So then, we had a third point of view that was like, wait a minute, y'all. Have you thought about this?
We're like, oh, okay. And then brought in the lovely spit takes of every time Marcus or I said something wild and Brian nearly lost his tea.
Yes.
I mean, the funny part about this is like, to your first point, like I always did feel like it was like Marcus and Doug feel a certain way, and I'm kind of enjoying throwing a monkey wrench into this. I feel like 50% confident about this, but I'm gonna go 100 because I do feel a certain way.
Yeah.
But no, and to the other points, I mean, I've always enjoyed hearing those perspectives, and I think one of my favorite moments is talking about like I think it was Tom and Jerry. Like we can get down to the silliest details of like what works and what doesn't work for us, and I always come back being like, okay, I didn't think about it that way. It's just it's wonderful. Yeah. Especially, I've learned so much about Zack Snyder's Justice League just from being a co-host on this podcast. We'll get more to that, I'm sure.
Yes, we absolutely will. I do want to share a clip from an episode because Brian, you brought up this like very like narrowed down to the specific detail, and I think this clip that I'm going to show does a great job of like highlighting that of like you like setting it up and being like, what do you think of this? And then Marcus and I kind of just going and making it something silly. So here's a clip.
Please.
DC, don't do this shit. Please.
We
Jesus
don't
Christ.
need everything.
Put that money to it and don't give it a fucking movie. At least put the shit on the app, the HBO Max app.
Right.
Like nobody wants to watch this. I don't want to watch somebody whose power is Red Bull and Viagra. Like there's a reason he's a background character, is because it's not going to hold people's attention. Like, what made you pick?
Not for more than an hour.
We're gonna have 1 hour jokes all through this entire news.
I could do this for about an hour.
Oh
my God.
Talking about Our Man.
I'm talking about Our Man.
Oh my
And then
gosh.
all from Brian going like, yep, and he gets this substance and that's how he controls time. And
Oh
then
my
we
gosh.
just went with it. So
Oh my god.
there you have it.
I mean, like, not to retread, but yeah, like you dump Ava DuVernay, and you're like, no, Our Man.
Yeah, no more New Gods. We're gonna do Our Man.
The other funny part too is I posted on TikTok about Our Man, and there was a commenter that was like, "You got it wrong. He doesn't take. It's not pill. It's you have to." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, man, but like that. This is still not as good as whatever she was gonna make. Like you're missing the point."
Yes, the whole point is we don't want to see that shit.
We don't want to see. Yeah, and I mean, and Black Adam comes out this year, so we'll be able to find out whether or not he actually makes an appearance in that movie. So, but Brian, you pivoted us into a good space, which is like favorite moments. And so I'm just sort of curious if you all would like to if we can all share, not you all, I'm not interviewing you, if we can all share some of our more favorite moments from the pod. So just anything that jumps out.
I have a list. I'm gonna bring up my list here.
So glad you have a list.
I mean, it's me.
Typical Brian energy. He's got a list.
Brian Roush has a list. Oh my gosh. I think one of my obviously Artemis Fowl. Like it's where we found all of our energy. But I think the part that makes me so like it's such a high point for me, even after all this time, is the fact that like all of us were equally confused at like this movie's existence. None of us could rationalize like, well, I enjoyed this. I think the only thing all three of us enjoyed were like, it's kind of a cool world for the elves or the leprechauns. That's cool, I guess. Like that's the only thing we agreed on, and then everything else, like Marcus didn't understand this black man with blonde hair. I didn't understand the whole scheme of it. Doug didn't understand like the structure of the story, and then like it just the whole thing. We were just, but like we were so in sync with it about how weird of a movie this was.
Yeah. I think to your point, Brian, you said we kind of touched on like the different powers that the different mythical creatures had. And I remember saying specifically about the goblins, maybe that they could breathe fire that we didn't know about. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool. They built a whole like mythology around this. But yeah, that you're absolutely, that's also on my list of favorite moments, just because for very same reasons where we kind of found our vibe. So
yeah, for real.
I think one of my favorite moments is it's kind of a toss up, but the Wachowski selection. Okay. So the all of us. So we had this thing. We tried to come up with this game that we wanted to start each podcast with as a warm up. And it started off as Stump the Chumps, but now it's called.
I remember that.
I was never part of Stump the Chump. I just want to say this for the record. If I ever run for office, if that matters.
Stump the Chumps was I didn't know what else to call it, so I was like, it's kind of like a Stump the Chump style game, and I just started calling it that.
And then we was like, we got to do something else because that shit is not right. So then we start Catch That Quotable, right? And so this is Brian's like second episode on officially? First?
I think so.
So
first, but it's one of the first.
So so we all come together, everybody picks a quote, and you got to figure out what movie it's from, right? So Doug goes first. Well, no, I think Brian goes first because
he does because he was the guest. Yep.
and Brian goes first, and he does goddamn Speed Racer.
He does do
And
Speed
his
Racer.
movie quote is he reads the quote, and I said, wait a minute, I know this quote. Doug knew it off rip. I said, is that goddamn Speed Racer? It was. Fucking lose my mind because Speed Racer is so underrated, right?
It is an underrated movie for sure.
Doug goes next, and he has a movie from The Matrix.
Yeah.
And I go, and I also have a movie from The Matrix. We all picked something from the Wachowski world, and it blew my damn mind that we were all, it just felt like that was not a coincidence. Like, if you're gonna have a first episode with a trio, that is how you start a fucking episode.
That's absolutely accurate.
Yeah, I like just the idea. Well, because I was like, I kind of want to like go in, like I just want to get like a unique quote. Like I don't know if they'll get it. And like Speed Racer, one of my favorite movies, and I'll talk about it forever. But I was like, I don't know, we'll see. And then like the moment Marcus got it, I was like, all right, it's gonna be a good vibe. We're gonna be good here. It's gonna be great.
We were good to go.
That's incredible.
The other toss up for me is anytime there was a moment where we as a group addressed something that was serious. So whether that was the murder of George Floyd, the insurrection, it was literally, anything. I can't remember the first one that we did, but there was a time where I think it was Floyd.
I think it was George Floyd.
Yeah, because that was that was the biggest thing in the world at the moment.
Yeah.
And really shifted the world to where it is.
It might have been Breonna Taylor too.
Oh yeah,
I feel like we might have brought something up about Breonna Taylor's murder and said like that it's bullshit that somebody can't even be in their own apartment and not have to worry about this. So yeah, so
it was a mix of different things, and that was the first time for me that I came on here with intentions to say something from my perspective, and never intended anybody else to say anything. But then I hear Doug, and I'm like, of course Doug gonna say. We have conversations all the time. Of course, Doug is going to say something, but of course, saying something on your podcast in a public forum is completely different. But then here comes Brian Roush. This is the first time that we've had a serious subject like this. No explanation, no pre-pro about it. And he comes in and vocalizes thing in this manner of, there's no other way to word it, of somebody who reads frequently.
Oh, right.
My stuff really comes from the heart, unscripted. I don't want to speak from Doug's perspective, but Brian, I know because he reads a lot, he has a way of articulating things in a very specific manner. But that was a moment we were all connected once again and didn't need any planning for it. We just did it. And I was like, fuck yes, this is magic. I got these two friends, these two guys we can talk movies with, but also talk about the real life shit as well.
Yeah.
And honestly, I feel like that is the strength of this podcast, and one of the reasons that I love being here every week, because and I've talked about media literacy before, and I won't get on that soapbox, but the idea that we are bombarded with all of these stories, all of these shows and movies and books and comics and everything. And people just kind of let it wash over them. And it's like, okay, I'm moving on. And this is a group of people that I can talk to where it's like, nah, this is messed up. And what is this even trying to say? Right. And this is how it made me feel to move in this world. And I feel like all three of us agree, these types of things have a significant impact on us, on our culture. And there's stuff you gotta unpack, even in a movie like The Little Things that we watched, where it was I don't even know how to summarize it. It's a 90s mystery thriller. And there were so many elements in there that were just I don't know, this made me feel weird. Do you guys feel the same? It's yeah, it made me feel weird. We definitely feel weird. Yeah. We probably shouldn't do XYZ and what's up with Jared Leto. Anyway, that's
always the question of the day.
Right. Yeah, that's also that's a theme with us. But I feel like that is something we bring to our authentic selves, and not to plug already, but one of the reasons why we remain independent and we like being independent, because we get to talk about all this stuff where if we were part of a network or a group or a corporation, the people would not want us to be talking about hey, this is upsetting and it's part of a capitalistic system and that's wrong and we're going to call that out. And like, if you're enjoying media, you should be aware of that. Or like, hey,
right.
Disney makes great stories, but wow, they sure are taking a lot of our money and that's not great.
Oh man,
so
yeah, remember that.
I just feel like that's one of the reasons I keep coming back. I've talked longer than I anticipated. And Marcus, you said a lot of very nice things, and I appreciate that as well. So I just wanted to say that before I forgot.
I think the other thing that I'll add to this portion that I appreciate is that we're not afraid to, and some of y'all don't necessarily know this because it's some of the movie magic that kind of comes on along with making the podcast, is when we decide to do a movie, it's like, yeah, we try to pick the mainstream things that come out. But y'all, there's not a lot of mainstream shit that happens all the time. Like there are definitely down portions of where there isn't a lot of us for us to like watch. And one of the things I really appreciate is the lens and the perspective that some of us bring that we bring to, should we be giving this movie with this director or this actor our time? And Brian, like I remember the conversation we had via chat about watching Fat Man with Mel Gibson. We were like,
oh my gosh,
he's starring in a movie. Do we want to talk about him? Because he kind of sucks. So like, do we want to talk about it? And I appreciate like the considerate of that even being a consideration. And what I appreciate about that in terms of this space is it makes the three of us better. Because even if one person is like, I don't like this, like maybe we shouldn't watch this, I didn't even necessarily consider that as being problematic. And so I appreciate the space that we just not only have with each other, but just the level of care and consideration that we bring to the movies that we decide to watch.
Well, and the thing I enjoyed about that, it was like you heard the conversation real time, like all three of us being like, oh, okay. Like I mean, we all had that conversation. It's recorded. You can listen to it. You can hear me being like, yo, I didn't like this movie one bit. Walt Goggins was okay, I guess. But I really hate Mel Gibson. Like, and you can hear us working through all of that, like in real time. And I just feel like, I just feel like it's important. I also feel like it's important to showcase, like, yes, that conflict happens, and like this is how you work through it, and like how it's not just necessarily like a left or right like direction. I think Marcus, if I remember that episode correctly, I think Marcus speaks to it very eloquently of like, yeah, a guy's a jerk, but like also XYZ. Like there's so many other things going on here, and this is where I'm coming from, and it's not a monolith of like, do you support Mel Gibson or not? There's so many other things happening there, and how we use our platform too. And I feel like that was a really good discussion and very, very fruitful.
For sure. Yep. Completely agree. One of my favorite moments. So there are two for me. And both are not that I don't love the vibe that we have week in and week out, but the one that we had, Marcus, is our interview with Rashina, because that was such a moment of like legitimacy. I felt like, especially as we were like a fledgling podcast for the most part, and we actually have an interview with a direct, like someone who's in the business, like with a capital B, of like a writer, a big fucking deal, and an all around nice person. Like, so that to me was like such a cool moment. And I think that's why the other end of the spectrum, like another cool moment, was this fucking getting Adam Egypt Mortimer to like show up and actually, and again, for no other reason than we kind of hounded him a little bit. Like, I
mean, our people on Instagram did. Marcus led that charge.
Yes.
It was like, when we say hounded, that's like a joke. And I think
it is a joke.
He says it as a joke. We literally have maybe like 3-4 people inbox him, and these were just like our people, our friends that just wanted to see us be great. And that was something else that was like a big moment. We watched Arch Enemy a week before and loved the movie, discussed it in depth.
Oh my gosh,
man, that's crazy as hell. And then what else is crazy is Doug Wagner's fucking mind, right? So what Doug won't tell you is the amount of work he puts into the podcast outside of this, right? Because I have moments, I'll admit it on air. Sometimes I get so goddamn busy that I'd be like, I don't even respond to messages. Brian was sending stuff all week, and I've been asleep since like Friday. So, or just trying to
I wrote a novel about Power of the Dog, so
He
Marcus
did.
can
He did.
enjoy that at his leisure.
I did, and I read it, and I responded to everything. So don't think I'm just an asshole.
Oh my
But
gosh, you're fine.
the amount of work that Doug puts in outside of this was the start of why don't we just start reaching out to people?
Yeah.
Because shout out to Haley Warren, she connected us with Rashina Nash, and that was the podcast that put the battery in our fucking back because we asked the question, why not us? Me and Doug literally sat and dissected that conversation for 3 days.
Yeah.
We sat there and figured out why not us. And it was a great question to figure out why not us? Why can't we just be who we are? So then we watch Arch Enemy, love it, dissect it, discuss it in a natural way with no intentions of pumping and priming it up because we want to reach out to this person. That was like, what if we just reached out to Adam Egypt Mortimer? Like this was his Instagram or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like on it. I Instagram and DM'd him. I made a clip of the post, told people hop in the DMs on our socials, and they did it.
Yeah.
I mean, what a moment. I mean, what an absolute moment because like I do want to like pump up Marcus and Doug here because like I have a family. I don't have time always to put energy into some of the more periphery stuff with the podcast that is absolutely necessary. And like I remember coming back and Marcus was like, hey, like go to Instagram, do XYZ. And I was like, okay, like fine. You know, like
it's like a lot of work.
You know, it's a shot, whatever. And I'm like messing around on Instagram, whatever. I tag him too in whatever post. And then here we are 2 weeks later, and I'm like sweating because it's like I'm going to talk to a director of which I watched the film of who we were not invited to any press event. We were never we never had that access. This guy was like, yeah, sure, I'll come talk to you.
Right before going to a Lakers game, just was like,
just casually
on the Zoom call and was like, I got a Lakers game in about 30 minutes. So like whatever we can get done before then.
I just want to like give a shout out to Adam Egypt Mortimer because like
100%.
Dude, that's amazing. Like you made time for like there are other podcasts you could have gone to and you made time before your Lakers game to come talk to us about your movie that we loved and you're like, I guess I'll talk about this movie. Like it was amazing and it's something I will never forget.
Yeah, it was in the middle of the afternoon on a fucking Monday. He was like, sure, why not? That's no big deal. I do want to play a clip quickly from his interview, let's
do it.
Which I have.
I want to make sure it feels like a big responsibility to put Black characters in your white man's movie that you're making, a white man because I am one, right? Like it feels like a responsibility, and at the same time you need to immediately let go of that feeling, like in the sense that I'm not trying to make a movie that's about issues or about this is not a movie that's about the Black condition or what, like like it's not like reaching for something general, it's reaching for something that's very, very specific about like who is Indigo and who is Hamster. And
so that's just a little clip that I had. And again, his vibe, he jumps on, he's like, hey, so good to meet everybody. And he's got this purple hat on, he's got these overalls on, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, and I was immediately intimidated, like immediately like, oh no, I'm in a different spot now. And then just the fact that we had such kind of like a cool vibe with him that even after he goes like, you guys go to Comic-Con, let's connect at Comic-Con, we'll hang out. Who the fuck? Like we're just some like hello, sir, we live in South Dakota. Like we're not cool. I mean, we're cool people, but like we're kind of like a hidden gem. So it's a hidden gem.
I mean,
so that's
personally
kind of
the news.
I like it.
I got jam. But that's who that's like just who we are and what. So that moment was absolutely very, very like.
Let's
cool.
talk about all of the guests. Like let's just
do that.
Yes, we
like
should.
We've had a wide spread of guests for
we really have
South Dakota. Like if we're really looking at it, like we've had Lamont Sellers who came in while we were doing more than a movie series, right?
Yep.
Because of his background with African American history and movies and growing up and what that was.
Sure.
Then we went to Rashina Nash, and that jump in itself during that moment in the movie because once again Haley Warren connected us and was like, "This is a big." She is working her way up to the top, and this is going to be somebody who is going to be big, and they just work hard. She dropped some gems on us, and then went and commented about in her story about how much of a vibe it was and how comfortable she felt opening up on our podcast. That's a huge deal. And then you look at Adam Egypt Mortimer. Then we look at Jessica Jones, who came in and gave us some insight from another person, because we're an all-male podcast. Of course, we're not going to get it right all the time. Like, that's impossible. So then we got Jessica Jones, and then we have what's my guy's name from me and Brian? Doug was out sick.
Charlie Jewell when I was dying.
Jewell.
Charlie
shout
Jewell.
out to Charlie if you are listening. Probably not, but we appreciate you showing up after you had exclusively talked to Doug, and then Doug wasn't able to make it. And here's Marcus and I, like, we've never talked to you before. We're gonna talk about this movie now. Let's do it. And it was a great podcast.
And then about such like a low key movie too.
Yeah.
Like that movie was so like low key. I don't even. Do you remember that? I could tell you the plot of that, but I couldn't tell you the name of it.
I want to say it's Save Yourself.
Save Yourself. Yeah, that sounds right. About the aliens.
Yes. Yeah, because it was the indie film. Save Yourself.
Yep.
And so, like, it was just great. It was just great. We just had great. Oh, Stephanie Williams.
I was just gonna say.
I mean,
how could you mess Steph on there?
Goddamn Williams.
Yeah, I'm okay taking some time here with Stephanie Williams, who I want to point out, like, Doug is like a lot of times this spark, and he's like, hey, let's maybe do this. And it's like, all right, like, let's give it a shot. And I just DM'd Stephanie Williams. I'm saying this out loud now. I was like, hey, I like your X-Men memes. I think they're really cool. I'm on a podcast. Do you want to talk about New Mutants? Never expected her to respond. She responds, she's like, yeah, that sounds really nice. And one of our best episodes, like, if you're new to the pod, or you're like, what are your top 10? I need to know. New Mutants is easily all of us firing on all cylinders with a guest, having both like absolutely asinine off the wall humor, and also being like, by the way, this is a very serious thing. The way they explain this very serious thing, like and it works. Like they aren't hard right turns. It like naturally gets there, and it's easily one of our best episodes. And Stephanie Williams was there to provide context as a comic book writer, as a comic book fan. And I would say as an expert, because that's the thing that made me so excited about her, is that, like, I don't know anything about New Mutants or any of the individual characters in there, and the fact that she could just be like, well, in the comic that's kind of like, that's not exactly accurate, and I was like, oh shit, that's fantastic. I mean, so and this woman is making like fan dub edits of the 90s X-Men, like any music, any type of dialogue. The memes are off the charts. I'm just gonna put it that way. And that she also just moved to TikTok too. She did. But she always brought that energy, and she was always a delight to talk to about it all. Like anything. We also had her on for WandaVision. Yeah. We also had her for Black Widow, which was amazing to talk about. Also, you want to talk about third perspective. Marcus and I still do not see eye to eye on that movie, and that is fine. I enjoy it.
And that is perfectly okay.
It's perfectly
and
okay.
She also like Nubia and did all of this great stuff. Just shout out to Stephanie Williams for just being a dope ass person. Yeah, don't get me started. I got like 6 copies. I have all of the
if you're not reading Nubia, like, do that. And then the Wonder Woman event that's coming up, she's involved with that too. Make sure you're checking that out.
Yeah, I'm actually going to play a clip from when she came on to talk about WandaVision.
Please.
That feels a little weird.
Good point. That's a good point.
I feel like that it would have been fine.
Right.
If they just would have tied it up, if they would just would have tied that up, then it just would have been so great. Because now, like before, I was feeling like, okay, Monica's getting a way different treatment than her mom got in Captain Marvel too. Captain Marvel, which was in service to Carol's story. And then, like, now with this finale, like, I still don't think that there's, Monica got the same exact treatment as Maria, but it's still kind of similar in the parallel that she propped this white lady up, only she got powers this time. So, that's the consolation.
It's fair. Thanks for help.
Yeah, thanks. But I don't want that. Like, that made me very angry.
Yeah. Damn, that's a good episode, y'all.
That's a great episode.
That's a good episode. You got to go back and listen to it, because we get into Charles Xavier being a dick, and it forever changed my perspective of Charles Xavier. Like, moving forward. That was a good
I remember
episode.
the time. I remember in the New Mutants episode, she's like, "God, Charles, you bald headed bitch," and then she's like, "Oh, Doug, sorry."
It took me 5 minutes to get that joke. By the way, I was like, "What are you so upset about?"
And I was like, "No, it's
It was
okay.
so good.
I am."
So good. So good.
But yeah, you're right. And I think the other thing is that I think for all of our guests, from the Rashina Nashes to everybody that we've had as a guest on the pod, what I appreciate about it is just the vibe that we've had, and we create such a welcoming environment. I think that speaks to the three of us and the type of people we are, because there are some podcasts that I'm going to assume, I've not been on many as a guest anyway, where it feels very like procedural and very transactional, and it's like, well, thanks, bye. And you're a part of the Films in Black. When you come on the pod, like, you're a member of the Films in Black and White family. Like, we don't want it to be I will always, regardless of whether Stephanie comes on again, I'm always going to support her shit, because one, she was good to us, and I like being good to the people who are good to me, but also her stuff is awesome. And I think that speaks, again, Brian, to the point you brought up earlier about being an independent podcast. Like, there would be certain guests that we would have to have if we were affiliated with a major like brand or distributing company, like whatever it might be. We would have to push some of that company line a little bit, which is what makes this special, is that we don't have to do that, which is awesome.
I also think it's important to bring up too, and and I'd love Stephanie to come and talk about this if she's ever able. But I mean, the coverage Stephanie got when Nubia was releasing is very different than other writers, in the fact that like Stephanie she did not have as many opportunities for interviews with other outlets, which was weird.
Very weird.
It's
Stupid.
strange. I don't have a good vibe about it, is what I'll say right now. But we invited her. We want to give her a platform because she is a great voice within that community, and we have the ability to do that. And we love having her on because of that. And that's one of those examples that can contrast us to other people. One of the reasons I love being on this podcast, because it's like, no, like, why wouldn't you have Stephanie on your show to talk about, like, her amazing run on this character Nubia? Now, it's gotten better. Like, I have seen more things with her in it, but I remember when the series was starting to release, it was like, why isn't everybody talking about this? Or why aren't we picking this up? A whole lot to unpack there.
Right. Yeah, no kidding. Absolutely. Yeah. So in addition to some of the, like, our favorite guests, which this hasn't flowed so well. I'm curious. So we've watched a lot of movies for this podcast. I remember,
oh my gosh,
what was it? Like August, we had to watch like 6 in a row, and it just didn't stop.
The fall of 2021 was
rough.
That I didn't finish it with y'all. I didn't do Venom. I had to go to a wedding.
Oh my God, that's right. You did.
And I had to bow out, but I was like, y'all, we're running ragged. Like, we gotta take it. We gotta take a beat.
We need a news episode or a break, whichever one comes first.
I was so tired of watching movies, I started boycotting that shit. Hell no, we won't go. Hell no, we won't go.
Yeah, Marcus was absolutely not having it. What I am curious, though, from you all is what have been some of your favorite movies that we've watched for this podcast. And I'm actually going to start us off, because I can tell you one of my like favorite movies that we've watched for this podcast. I really, really, really enjoyed The Devil All the Time.
I was thinking the same thing.
I was just about to say that.
Damn it!
I was just about to say that.
I was gonna say The Devil All the Time.
Yeah. So yeah, The Devil All the Time was such a unique movie. One, it's a unique movie with a unique story. Real bummer. Like, you kind of need to watch you need to watch a SpongeBob cartoon like immediately after.
You need to have a chaser
just to have some sort of like palate cleanser. But I just remember the way we unpacked it and the way we talked about it. And I just remember like the choices, the acting, like all of it top to bottom was just such a good movie that was probably not one of the first like good movies we had watched, but one we were like, damn, like that was incredible. That was really well done. And all three of us were like, damn, that was incredible. That was really well done. So that was my probably one of my favorites. How about you all?
That was actually my favorite. I was literally thinking The Devil All the Time was my favorite because it's so unique to us. Like we talked about Tom Holland and Spider-Man and Robert Pattinson and Twilight and Gonna Be Batman, but we've never dissected a movie that heavy, I don't think, before. We're so used to joking and laughing and making light of everything, but this one required a different dissection. So I really enjoyed that. My second would be Zack Snyder's Justice League.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, Zack Snyder's Justice League was my favorite because of the background context. So when we heard about everything Joss Whedon was doing with his nasty ass, and it kind of ties into one of my other favorite things about the podcast. In our description, it says we pull no punches. And I feel like that's kind of where I come in, because if you're listening to a podcast, there was somebody who said they would listen to our podcast in the morning. They were a teacher, and they would listen to the podcast in the morning, like on speakers in their room, and they would have to turn it off. Marcus started talking.
Yeah, my friend Rob. My friend Rob. Shout out to Rob. Rob's a teacher at Sioux City West, and he would say a lot of times I have to. Rob would say like, "Yep, so he's like a teaching consultant at Sioux City West. So he'll be in his room, getting ready, and he'll be like listening to an episode of the podcast. He's like, "Can you give me some sort of heads up when you're gonna drop like 3 F-bombs back to back, because I need to turn it down because I'm listening to it in my classroom." And it's like, oh yeah. Maybe you just shouldn't do that anymore. All right, we
don't have a clean version of our podcast, but that's what I love when we say pulling no punches. When we found out what Joss Whedon was doing and all the nasty shit that he was doing, not just because he ruined Justice League, but that tied into it. Like, wait a minute, you fucked over Justice League, and then it started coming out. You're a nasty motherfucker. So then I started this whole fuck Joss Whedon.
You really did.
This moment, this movement. Where it was fuck Joss Whedon. Then that led into release the Snyder Cut. And I'm pretty sure everybody on here was like, that's not coming out. Like, that's
I was firmly in that camp.
Marcus, there was a long time where I didn't want it to come out. Where I was so like, can we move on? Can we stop talking about it?
Yep.
I wanted so badly for there to be a different discussion than the Snyder Cut, and you got it. There you go.
And it's important to say it was good. Like it blew away expectations, mine included.
Yeah, I want to share this.
Kudos to Marcus. He was right on the money.
I do want to share this
about it, because wait, before we start the clip, we also mentioned that I feel like, and I could be wrong, but we mentioned that they should release the Snyder Cut on HBO Max.
I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure when HBO Max came out,
I'd love to find that episode.
Brian was right about releasing movies on both platforms. He predicted that.
He was.
He was the originator of that. Because there was a moment, I'm not bullshitting y'all. We were saying ideas on this podcast, and then 2 weeks later, they were being announced as news releases.
Yes.
It was blown. I said, some exec is listening to our podcast.
Yes.
And presenting these ideas.
Totally.
I feel like Disney was listening to at least the first episode, because Marcus goes, I did a news article on our very first episode. Go back to last week and you can listen to it. And I said, oh man, it looks like we might get some Skywalker saga characters that might show up in The Mandalorian. And we were like, I don't know, who would you do? And Marcus goes, well, I suppose you could do Boba Fett.
Right on the fucking money.
And here we are. He has his own series.
Oh my gosh.
Was actively in season 2.
Like, 100%. No, and absolutely, Marcus was, and me, the Star Wars guy, who'd like, I will like entertain any thoughts. Like, no. No one's showing up a Mandalorian. No. And then here's Marcus, and he's like, nah, Boba Fett. And then what blows my mind at the end of season 2? Luke Skywalker. So Marcus has been right on the money like the entire time. And then
100%.
I mean, Doug, you called the entirety of Tenet, by the way, like the entirety of just like how it was gonna happen. And like at one point I was like, Doug, maybe like I don't know. Like, I guess we'll see. No, 100% that movie bombed and everybody blamed each other and movie audiences and stuff like that. And then it like went to HBO Max like 2 months later. Oh my
Yes,
gosh. And Doug, you
because
called all of that.
yeah, we spent a long time on filming it forwards and backwards, and I was like, people don't have that kind of patience. Like, they don't want to see the same movie fucking twice. So, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I want to play this clip though from the Snyder Cut. And this clip is very special because this is the moment where Marcus gets this like, oh, I'm so fucking glad this was good. I'm so glad this movie was good. So I'm gonna show it.
Documentary, a movie that has technically come out before with characters that already exist off of this theory and this mythical story of Zack Snyder and this Snyder Cut. Okay. So I go in and I start watching the movie, and instantly it feels like a completely different movie from the opening credits. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm excited because I say, oh fuck. I'm not gonna get into the specifics, but I can tell you I kept stopping to kind of catch where I was so I could give you my feelings and emotions on where I was. So within the first 10 minutes, I said, oh fuck. Okay. I was like, oh shit. And I kept watching and I kept watching. All of a sudden, this huge smile comes across my face.
Sure.
Because there's this realization that, okay, I kind of readjusted myself because this is a completely different experience.
Mm-hmm.
I was fucking right.
You were very right.
100%.
You were very
I was right.
Toot that horn, man. You were absolutely right.
As much as Marcus and I usually agree on things, if you want to hear an episode where Marcus gets audibly exasperated by my like critique of Batman and Superman and the nature of who they are, I was rewatching the video for this, and there's a moment for 3/4 of the video, because when you're in iMovie, you can see like the setup for like 2/3 to like 3/4 of it. Marcus has a hat on, and then at just some moment, he just takes it the fuck off. Like he's like, I'm over it. I don't want to talk about it. You're being too nitpicky. Like, and so we don't always agree, and it's good to celebrate the moments as well.
Yeah,
I mean, I think the thing with the Snyder Cut is I was just so befuddled. One, that it actually happened. I like could not believe it was happening. And I remember sitting down with Maggie, and she was like, "Okay, we're doing this, right?" Because she's a huge comics fan too. Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh, but wait, like, how long is it?" I'm like, we're gonna like, we're committing 4 hours." And she was like, oh, and I remember she had to like mentally prepare herself, like, we're doing this, like, I don't know what this is gonna be. And then the sea chanting was happening, and I was like, this is like, I feel like I'm watching like a movie about Greek gods right now. Yes. And then also, I just want to say, validating quite literally, I shouldn't say that, validating a lot about every single article that was said about Ray Fisher, everything Ray Fisher had said 100%. About this movie, about what had been cut, and narratively why it was important. And then you watch the Snyder Cut and you're like, this was centered around Ray Fisher. No wonder this movie sucked with Joss Whedon, because you took out the heart of it. You took out its main character.
100%.
And then I don't know, you put in a Russian family instead. What are you doing? So just seeing that and having that validation of everything that we had been reporting and talking about, that was incredible. I wish Ray Fisher all the best, and I hope that he gets more opportunities as time goes on, because I know it's going to get overlooked because people have opinions about comic book movies, but Ray Fisher does such a great job in that movie, and it is totally... The Snyder Cut is a wonderful experiment that absolutely works.
Yeah, it's insane to me that a studio actually gave in to fan demands. I still am like baffled.
Me too.
Because no other person, most of the time, that's the way it works, right? Like anytime you put a piece of art out there, you're like, nope, it's going to stand by itself. Yep. And it is just insane that they were like, nope, we're going to walk this back because we can. So... yeah, I was genuinely surprised by that as well, Brian. So, yeah. Gentlemen, I'm also kind of curious as far as like questions. I want to talk a little bit about like moments. I think we've done a lot of like celebrating, which is always good, like to celebrate and talk about some of our moments. I do want to make sure that like our fans and our listeners do get an adequate like understanding of what it's like to be in this space. A phrase I say a lot is week in and week out. And so my question is that like it is a week in and week out, and are there moments over the course of the past 99 episodes since we've started this where you've had any like doubts or maybe bumps along the road where you've sort of said like this is maybe too much and you've maybe second guessed? So I'm just kind of curious about your thought process on like, you know, it's not all going to be sunshine and roses. So I'm kind of curious to just give people an honest assessment of like what it's like making a weekly movie podcast.
I mean, I guess I'll jump in. I mean, like,
yeah,
I've never had any doubts. Like,
Right.
I wouldn't be here every week if I had like significant doubts. I think I'll just
Right.
lead off with that. I think we already touched on it. And I'm not going to belabor the point, but I do think when we watched Fat Man with Mel Gibson, for me, it was tangling with a lot of those things of like, this is a bad dude. The only way to watch this movie is giving money. Is that me supporting him directly? And the conversations we had about that challenged my viewpoints and challenged my opinions. Not all of them were changed. Do I still think like boycotting somebody through money is a fantastic way to send a message?
110%.
I do think that is, but I also feel that it's not an up or down thing. It's not a left or right thing. More people than Mel Gibson contributed to that movie, who were paid to the genre as well, and also using our platform to say like, no, this this person is not great. I can still look at this piece of art, know that's not great, tell you it's not great, and give you the media literacy to trust you that you can make your own decision about that. So that you don't have to. So I feel like, you know, stuff like that has helped me bring more nuance. Has that always been comfortable? No, but you grow in your areas of uncomfortability, and that has been the exception that proves the rule, that like we are like always moving forward with the type of media that we want to talk about and the things that that we want to highlight with our platform. And I feel like we are a better trio and a better podcast for talking about all that stuff, even though it wasn't always like it always like, oh, this isn't making fun of Artemis Fowl. That's, you know, like that's not why we're always here. We're trying to unpack some of that stuff as we talk about films and stuff like that. So, but I never doubted it. It was always just like, oh, I hadn't thought about this.
Yeah. I appreciate that, Brian. Marcus?
I think I had my doubts, and it's not from a perspective of I didn't believe in the podcast. My thing was we always had good chemistry, whether it was the three of us or me and Doug. We could talk all day long. And so even if, you know, 5 or 500, if 5 people are listening, 500, 5,000, 5 million, it didn't matter. We were going to have a good time. But then we hit a certain point where there were 2 shifts when my understanding, you know, when you share a podcast, the vision has to be a shared vision. And because I am who I am, as like I'm so used to being the one that's got to step up and just go do it. Doug is also just as much like that too. Not to exclude Brian, but when we were first starting,
yeah.
So it was like Doug has a vision. If it needs to be done, Doug is going to be like, I'm just going to do it. And so a lot of times he'll have stuff already finished. Like he taught himself Photoshop. He was like doing all the graphics. And I was like, wait a minute. At moments I was like, wait a minute, that's kind of my thing. And it would be like, so what am I supposed to do? You know what I mean? Like, what do I do when that happens? And I had to learn how to share the vision. But then I would have my doubts when I didn't know the numbers. I wasn't checking it every week. I wasn't checking it every episode. I would just be like, are people really listening to us? Because for one, my thing was people, immediate relationships. If I don't see people sharing our post on Facebook, Twitter, that I know, that I interact with every day, or they interact with something else, don't interact with the podcast stuff, it's kind of heartbreaking. And it's the same for Noah stuff too, right? Because I feel like, oh wait, like you don't support it, you don't love it, you know what I mean? You don't see the work that's being put into it. You know, is it really good? and I was putting my value in interactions as opposed to putting it into the authenticity of what we were doing.
Right.
And I had to pivot. I had to pivot and readjust, because then I had to realize, okay, we should do this because we're good at it and we love to do it. We're only good at it because we love to do it. Those two things are connected and intertwined, and we're having fun with it. So there were moments where we're trying to bring in new ideas, do all this new shit. Even me, no, we got to keep this thing. Or, hey, I'm in the comments, I'm in the group chat, like, I really think we should try Patreon extra bonus episodes. And I'm like, first of all, I'm single. These guys have full on family. Like, it's not realistic to think about. So I had to then not realize what my role was, but learn how to support in some areas, lead in some, but above all, have fun with it and have the shared vision. So I think there were moments that I was doubting, but it was because I wasn't used to not getting, it wasn't my vision that was being executed. So it wasn't my plan that I had to rely and lean on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. And I kind of agree with that, but from the opposite end of it, like the other side of it, of like, I've never wanted this to be the Doug Wagner show. Like, I just don't want it to. That's not my vision for it, is that I don't want it to be about me. One, because I literally couldn't do it without the two of you. And two, that's never what this has been about. Like, if I wanted to have my own podcast, I'd have my own podcast. Like, and
Doug AM Radio.
Right. And there might be 10 listeners and one of them is my uncle. Like, that's just kind of how it is. And so, like, I've always kind of just felt like I'd never wanted it to be that way. So for me, whenever I've had doubts, it's always been sort of like those leadership questions of like, was this the right decision? Like, is the podcast going in a direction where it's going to experience growth or not? And then you couple that with just some like inherent self-doubt of like, I'm not a podcast expert. My master's degree is in educational leadership. I don't know dick about marketing. Like, I don't know anything about marketing or Photoshop or social media. I know, like, I could tell you student development theory like the back of my hand, because that's my area of expertise. So there were always moments where, and there was like a trifecta of doubt. There was three key pieces that came up with the doubt of like the uncertainty of the direction, seeing the numbers and seeing like some low growth for that particular time, and then kind of coupling it, Mark, with what Marcus said of like, I'm not seeing anybody else talk about it. So is it just going out into the void and no one's hearing it? And so those three things usually spelled like a bad week, but but what I appreciate about it is, one, the two of you always like stepped up and said, like, usually like you almost read a room and were like, what can we do to help? And I was like, oh fuck, if one of you could just do this, that would be great. So just one of those things. And then on top of that, like, just then I usually took that as an opportunity to say like, no, I should share the numbers with them so they're seeing the same thing I'm seeing, because maybe they'll be able to put a different spin on it. And so I am extraordinarily thankful and grateful that we're at 100 episodes, but there were like moments where I was like, oof, I don't know how much longer I can do this. And then we'd have some like, and then we would pick each other up and it would be fine. We'd move on and it was great. And so, and now I can't imagine not doing it. And I think that that's the thing that is really, really cool about this moment. And Marcus turned me on to a comedian, Kev on Stage, and he talked about, you want to start a podcast and you want to see success with it. And one of the things he says is like, wait till you get to 100 episodes and then start kind of making those decisions. And I get why he says that, because you have to be consistent. Like, you have to be committed. And if you are not committed to the weekly grind or whatever your recording schedule is, if you're not committed to that grind, no amount of like fancy microphone is going to make up for that. No amount of fancy soundboard or podcast hosting platform is going to make up for that. Either you're committed to turning out that content week in and week out, or you're not. And that's what I love about what we have, is it's like, and to Marcus's point of, we love doing this and that's what makes it great. And there are moments where we're good at it and we love doing it. And I think that is just the key. That's the secret sauce, as they may say, because sometimes they ask like, well, what's the secret to your success? The secret to our success is that this doesn't feel like a job, even though the amount of time we invest into it might almost be borderline a job.
Like, don't get me wrong. Like, if the stars align and this becomes our full-time job the way we want to do it, like, yeah, like
100%.
I'm happy that you all would be great coworkers. I want to say that's a dream. I also think that I've also received feedback. There you go. Look at this. I've also Spotify offer us $100 million.
Please,
anyway,
we'll do way better than Joe fucking Rogan.
Yeah, there's 3 of us.
There's no racial
3
slurs.
of us for that price. We'll be exclusive. Anyway, not to bring in current events, but I have also gotten feedback.
Yeah,
I love making these guys laugh.
That's hilarious.
I have gotten feedback that, like, basically they said to me, when I listen to your podcast, I can tell you all genuinely enjoy talking about this, and it's not strained. It's not forced. It doesn't feel like you're doing this for the ads. Like, you actually enjoy. I can't remember what episode it was. Oh, like, you actually enjoy talking about Jungle Cruise. And I was like, well, yeah, like, we saw the movie. We had to talk. I'm like smiling just thinking about it.
You mean the Metallica music video? Why wouldn't I want to talk about that?
That was wonderful. The Unforgiven. But and I was like, well, yeah, like, how could you not? And that was like one of the moments where it clicked for me, where it was like, oh, not everybody thinks like that. Like, not everybody thinks like, I'm gonna go do this thing I enjoy on a weekly basis, and it's the thing I enjoy, and I'm gonna make it a priority. So yeah, that's part of the way that we keep doing it.
And the outside, I think the outside work, quote unquote, us being in a chat, group chats can be hectic, right?
Yes.
We understand that. But there was never a moment with this chat where I feel like, oh my God, I wish they would just shut the hell up. In fact, we are like, it's so weird because we'll send different pieces of news, whether it is something that intrigues the other person, and they were like, hey, I was just thinking about you. Here's this article that said this. Or stuff that interests them and saying, I can't believe they're going to do this. Y'all have to see this.
Yes.
And the group chat is literally, it's a wide range of anything and everything in the chat.
Yes.
And I think that's what I love about it, is because we don't just connect on like the day we record to then go through things and catch up on life. We were doing this when I'm going to say it. I don't know if I can't say it, but we're live. But like when Brian was looking for a new job.
Oh, yeah, you can say that.
And he had interviews. We were doing check-ins like, Brian, do you need anything? But Doug would message, whether we're messaging each other individually or in the chat, we're connected in one way or another, or thinking about a moment like when Doug and I went to Sioux Falls. And that's the other cool thing. Here's the work outside of this, right? There are moments where I wouldn't have done some of the things I've done if we didn't have this podcast. Taking a trip to Minnesota, Doug keeps hearing me mention Kev on Stage. He's like, hey, dude, was looking up these dates. Kev on Stage is going to be in Minnesota. We should go. We took a trip to Minnesota to go do that.
Yeah, that was fun.
A trip to Sioux Falls. We've been trying to take a trip to come see Brian. Like, we took a trip to Sioux Falls, and there was a joke in the chat where Doug keeps saying, there's no lanterns here. There's no lanterns here. No Kryptonians. No lanterns here. And we went to this event in Sioux Falls, and there was this moment that happened, and Doug is texting me, no lanterns here. There's no Kryptonians.
No protectors.
There's no protectors. And it was the dumbest thing that you just have to be in our chat and like on the pod to really understand it. Like, and I love that so much.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely, that's the best way to put it, is that we subscribe to that, definitely to that concept of like, we never stop talking. And I think the thing we like about it is it's like, we don't wait to hear from somebody. We understand and appreciate that the 3 of us individually get busy. I mean, Brian has 3 kids. I have 2. We both, all 3 of us have jobs.
Marcus is black.
Marcus is black and single. So if you're looking and that floats your boat, hit Marcus up. But the other thing is like, Marcus is also, the other thing is that Brian and I are 35-year-old dudes with parents. Marcus is, I am continually, and I've said this to Brittany before, I am continually blown away that Marcus wants to spend time with a 35-year-old man. Like, where I'm like,
for real,
because he has so many other like cool shit he could be doing. I said this to Brittany one day. I was like, he has literally people who like want to have a party. Like, not like, oh, like they're gonna get together and hang out. Like, no, they're gonna go party. And he's like, no, let's go see Avengers. I'm like,
Oh,
fuck,
damn
okay.
right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the thing that I love about it. And so
Damn right.
we subscribe to that concept of like, we're always communicating. Like that ABC, they say always be communicating.
There you
We
go.
don't stop. Like, and if people get busy or they drop off or they've got something going on, we just keep talking. And they were just like, they'll catch up. Like, it is what it is. So, yeah, we've got a great thing going here.
I really need to chime in. Everything you said was wonderful, Doug, and I need to chime in that this group chat has provided me so much life, because I always felt like I was annoying people when like movie news came out, and I would post it to like my Facebook, and it's like, people talk to me about this, and this group chat has given me so much life, because like we all know the inside baseball about it. So if I share an article about like WB's doing XYZ, like I don't have to tell Doug and Marcus like why this is a big deal,
Yeah,
or why
it's
Warner
true.
Brothers doing something with the DCEU is like earth shattering, and how are we all feeling about it. Like we can just rattle that off and immediately get up to speed. I also enjoy the breadth of what is in our group chat. I pulled up the links we share with each other.
Uh-oh, Brian, be
there
careful.
was-
Clear your TikTok algorithm before you do that.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I just like a glance here of the links we're sharing. Somebody shared a analysis of Frozen 2 and the feminine mystique.
That's incredible.
I shared a 3-hour cut of Uncharted 2 from YouTube.
been watching
And then Crabs, the teaser trailer. As well
we gotta
as
watch that movie.
yeah,
It looks
like as
insane.
well as I mean, like Zack Snyder reuniting with Ray Fisher, like just Steve-O's documentary, like just all this stuff from all over the place, but it has a home, and we enjoy talking about it even when we're not here on the podcast. It's just a genuine joy.
I shared a series of videos of a man who had a fleshlight that looked like Tow Mater from Cars.
You want to talk about difficult moments in this podcast, sir?
That moment where I ruined your algorithm on TikTok for the better part of a week.
I opened that in my home, and I
I
was just like, oh, what did Doug send me? And then it's like, that's
where my children sleep, Douglas. I opened that where my children reside.
Family. I'll never forget the shock that I had. And then Maggie was like, why are you making that face? And I was like, I'll tell you later, I guess.
when the kids go to sleep.
Now I see it. That's why we keep saying like, oh man, let's go visit Brian. And Maggie's like, not if he's gonna bring that shit in here.
No,
man,
soon it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen soon.
Gentlemen, I also want us to be a little bit hopeful in our podcast, and I want us to look towards like good things that are coming up that I think are like really exciting to share and to talk about. So what I'd like to hear from everybody, and I'll start us off, is like, what do we hope happens in the next like 100 episodes? Maybe it's the rest of this year, maybe it's the next 100. What do we kind of hope, and what do we hope and wish for this podcast going forward as we kind of get into episodes 100 to 200? The big thing that I'm very excited for in that milestone is, y'all, we're really close to 5,000 total downloads, which is an incredible metric. And it's the numbers are always, they are what they are, they're numbers. But the fact that we've gotten like 5,000 people to say like, yeah, I'd listen to that is staggering to me. I'm also always blown away by what episodes perform well. And I got to be honest with you, Wonder Woman 2 is out there doing the Lord's work for this podcast. It is single-handedly our most listened to episode, and I still don't know why. I have listened to it
after Christmas, and like we were all in our individual locations. To break, and like I did this out of my grandmother's sewing room on my laptop.
3 different time zones too,
because I was on Mountain Time.
That's right. It was 3 different time zones, and we just picked up our laptops, just talked about how we hated the goddamn movie.
It's true.
Hate is a strong word, but how we had some discrepancies with it.
Did not care for.
we enjoyed parts of it, but did not connect to it as a whole, is what I would say if Gal Gadot's publicist was like, you want her to come on the show? And I'd be like, yes, but first.
Not anything that she did.
She did the best she could with what she had.
Accurate. accurate.
But yeah, no, it was good. It was good.
But yeah,
I am a fan of, and so when 2020 started, I lie to you not, I told myself that I was done hoping. That I wanted to put into action the verb of believing.
Okay.
And just wanted to, because I felt like hope gave space for the other side not to happen, for things not to happen or not go the way that I do. It's like I didn't fully believe in something. You know what I mean? So I did tell myself I wanted to stop saying, I hope this will work or I hope this happens. I wanted to believe in some things, especially if I am looking forward to it happening. So I believe that in these next 200 episodes, we are going to grow abundantly.
Yeah.
And that while we grow, we're going to remain authentic in ourselves, and more people will want to come here to really be authentic and real, and not just be another podcast they go to kill 30 minutes. Like, I want people to, directors or whoever, to come on here and just give us the real and make them feel comfortable here. I'm not worried about us. I know that we will continue to grow. I am believing that we will be sponsored. We'll have ads, and that we will, if we get picked up by something and we do this full time, absolutely. I'm not too worried, because the way that we do this virtually, I could up and move, and we will still do. All of us could just up and move and transition, and we'll find a new time and a new way to record because of the way. So that's the blessing, is we don't live in town together, but that wouldn't stop the show. You know what I'm saying? Like, we already have a way to keep this thing going. So I'm believing in growth, and I'm believing in expansion, because those are two different things. You could grow, but you could not expand. So that's what I'm believing in.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that. Brian?
I have this mental image of, if it ever all worked out and the three of us were like, oh, we're doing this full-time job and we have a studio, the three of us in a physical space together, I don't know how we would get anything done.
Fucking energy, y'all.
That would be, the energy would just be off the walls, and I want that. I'm gonna manifest that. If I'm gonna borrow a term from Stephanie Williams, I'm gonna manifest this, because that would be amazing. I think for me, y'all have already hit on a lot of it. I think for me, it goes back to something I said at the start of the podcast, is that I really do feel like this podcast is having the conversations that a lot of folks aren't, or they're trying to get it for like a really quick clickbait type article, and not actually like delving into it. I don't know any other podcast that got into WandaVision where it was like, hey, the way they did, Monica Rambeau, like, that's not cool, and we don't like that. And a lot of people were pretty high on WandaVision, and we were for the most part too, but then it came to that ending and it was like, no, genuinely, we enjoyed it to this point, and then these things happened which made us not enjoy it. And I bring that up as an example because I love this genuine conversation about it. We're not trying to like say nice things so Marvel keeps inviting us to stuff. Like, we're not there. We are genuine fans, but we're not afraid to have that critique, and I want that to keep going, because I feel like we need genuine and authentic conversation about these pieces of media to make sense of them. And I think that media is so prevalent, and I promise this is going somewhere. It fills so many gaps in our society, especially here in the United States. It can be seen as a form of therapy. It's a form of entertainment. It's a form of community. It is a form of learning, right? Like, so many things. Like, when I think of like Judas and the Black Messiah, that was something I did not have a lot of information about. Like, and Marcus here was basically schooling me, and I was like, okay, I'm learning. I'm going to listen. And that's why I think these like podcasts like these are so important, because you have to talk about what you're seeing and making sense of it, so that when you go back out into the world, it's not just like, well, I saw this movie on HBO Max and I don't know, some stuff happened. I think Jesse Plemons was in it. I'm not really sure. No, you saw Judas and the Black Messiah, and these things that are still impacting us, and these people that gave their entire selves to tell this story, and why that's important. And that's something I want us to continue with this podcast into the future.
Yeah.
That's great word.
I think the other thing that I want to use the same language, because I think I appreciate that idea of like manifestation and belief instead of being hope. So for me, much of what you all said, I believe is going to happen. Like I believe that there will come a time with this podcast where we are going to have to, and it's going to be a positive change, but we're going to have to change our format where we are doing like a movie review, an interview with a prominent director or an actor, movie news, and then another, like that's going to be our schedule. Like we're going to have to combine some of this where we're going to get 30 minutes of a director's time or an actor's time, and that's going to be combined with a news episode. And so I believe there will come a time in this podcast in the next 50, next 100, where we have a format where there will be those movie episodes where we talk about those, but then there will come a time where there are the news episodes, the news is getting shorter, and we're going to spend 30 minutes with a prominent director. I believe, I know that that's going to happen. Like, and I have no notion, I have no knowledge other than my own conviction of how I know that, but I just know that. I also agree with the statement of like, I know that we're going to grow, but I also know that we're going to stay true to our roots, which is huge, and really, really important. So all of the things that you all say, like I also know and believe and manifest into the world for sure. So, I do want to take a moment, and I do want to just take a moment for, please.
I want to add to that point. If we're being realistic, and you do have to have these moments of course, follow the mantra, never offended, always humble.
Your mic went out. Did you know
that? Sorry. You always want to, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
You always follow the mantra, never offended, always humble, of course. But you do have to believe in self. And you do have to do self-evaluations of where you are. And here's what I believe. And somebody can tell me when I'm wrong. You can tell me if I'm wrong live on air. I believe that we are on cruise control. I had put out this tweet that very so often we get comfortable thinking we're operating at 100%, but really we've been operating at 85% and got comfortable there, and it became our new 100%. Okay?
Oh, sure.
I thoroughly believe we are operating at maybe 75%, like on cruise control, 75%. And that's partially because of people's schedules and shifting and families, that we, like, once we hit a point where we can do even 90 to 95% and we're firing on all cylinders all the time, you motherfuckers are in trouble, because
you really are.
We are so talented just within this group, and we have the shared vision that at its root, if it's not fun and it's not authentic, we will stop doing it. Yeah, that's the most important part that I believe all three of us can agree on. That when we really start going at 90, 95, 100%, y'all are going to be in trouble, and y'all are going to be in awe for those that are still supporting. Like, we're going to hit new heights once we get to that point. So I just wanted to add that in there.
And I will say that it's not going to take much. I have a feeling I could probably name 2 to 5 things that could take us to that 95% that would not be a huge lift.
Yeah.
I mean, we know what they are, but you're right. And I think that that's the other thing that I appreciated about the podcast, to back that statement up, is we, or at least I, am always chasing excellence when it comes to this, because I know that even if I'm not at 95%, at least I'm still at 75, instead of chasing 75 and having it fall off. I think that if we collectively hadn't been chasing, like, do the best we can with the environment we're in, with what we have, like, do the best you can where you can, when you can, to quote a certain Maisha Sellers on her quote, like, that is so important for what we do, because it's like, we can push as much as we want to, but at some point in time, we got to acknowledge that somebody's going to have a third kid, and we're going to have to just accept the fact that it's the reality of, like, taking a step back, or like being honest about that, or Doug's switching jobs and maybe can't give as much attention to this anymore, or Marcus is getting busy because things at USD are happening that he needs to focus on. Brian, that made me feel like I was calling you out for having a third kid.
Oh no, I didn't. No, you're fine. You're fine.
But like, just the reality of life catches up, and that's the other thing that I think I appreciate, and I think this is a good pivot, because yes to all of that, Marcus, But I think the thing that has made this podcast truly special for me is doing it with the two of you. The past year was a nightmare. Like the pandemic has been hard.
Yep.
And I think of people who have not had a lot of social interaction and they've been struggling, and they've been feeling lost or disconnected or disjointed, who have had some serious struggles. And I think I am eternally blessed that weekly I get to come on to a podcast space with two of my best friends, have a conversation about things that I love, and I can walk away being in a better position mentally than I was before I came on here. And that for me is so important, because if I'm having a shitty day, this turns it around real fucking quick. It turns it right around. When I was in my other job and maybe there were some frustrations that came out, didn't matter. It was Monday. It was podcast day. I didn't give a shit. At 4:00, I was like, whatever. I'm gonna go do something cool, and I'll talk to y'all later. So I think that's for my own mental health. And I think to your point, Marcus, is when we get to 95%, we're going to be dangerous. And I think so, whatever that looks like, we will also continue to be dangerous because of the bond that exists with the three of us.
For sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Retweet.
Absolutely. And yeah, for any folks that are listening, this is a great sizzle reel episode too, because we hit some really good highlights. And if you'd like to sponsor us, this is a great point to do that, because then we can give 95%, because then you can pay us, and that'd be great. We would love to do this.
That would be outstanding.
Yeah. The more you share, the more you listen, the more you get of us. And the more we can do this more, where our free time becomes this time.
Right.
There you go.
The love you take, the love you take is equal to the love you make there, advertisers and people who want to sponsor us. So yeah.
I just wanted to jump in really quick. It's you don't do this, you don't get to 100 unless there's a good vibe, and I just want to reciprocate that both Marcus and Doug, you've both been just amazing talking through all this stuff, and also giving me space to talk about all my weird stuff too. I think I bring up Star Wars in some substantive capacity about once a week, and you all are just okay, yeah, we're here to listen. We're gonna move on soon, but that's great, Brian. Good for you. That's awesome. And
you even said, Brian, yes, more of that.
More please. I asked Brian a dumbass Star Wars question today. An hour before this podcast started.
Oh my gosh, they just put up the card 2 Star Wars fact of the week. My gosh. Anyway, I appreciate you all. You don't keep coming back unless there are good people to do this with, and I love doing this with y'all.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll say the same thing. It's weird. It's not weird to me when we look at the age difference or anything like that, because this is one of the rare moments I get to be my full nerdy, authentic self.
Oh, sure.
I don't get to put this out in every day. If I talk about this shit at work, I don't think nobody will give a damn. If I talk about it at school, there may be a few that might bite, but getting into the comics and why this is so dope, and then tying in the diversity and inclusive aspects into it all, and being able to talk about all of that stuff under the same umbrella, this place makes me feel comfortable. And it all started off with just me and Doug at the desk talking and being introduced to Brian. And now these are two of my best friends that I could just talk about anything with. We literally will vent to each other, and I'll say, here's where the fuck I'm at with it.
True. It is true.
And there's no judgment. And it's all right. And then in the end, we're just kind of is everybody good? And we can all genuinely just be yes or no. And it's never anything where I feel like I'm good because I don't want to talk about it anymore. It's no, we can still talk even after it's over.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm grateful to have this space with my friends, even if we are right here. If that was all this was meant to be, was just us connecting, then fine. Sure. Be it. I'm perfectly fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Gentlemen, anything else that y'all like to say before we kind of close things out?
No. I was going to get into the origin of wash your ass and all that other stuff like that. That's a podcast for a different day.
I don't even know. I would love to hear it because I don't think I even remember when we started doing
it was
that.
random. I think it was so like, before we get into our 3-step process for success. We end every episode telling everybody to read a book, wash your ass, and drink some water and wash your ass.
True.
And I think I just randomly said it one day. And Doug was like, no, like we can make it a thing. Like, let's just keep giving people advice. It has nothing to do with movies or comics.
I was shocked when you said it, I think the first time. And I was like, yeah, let's keep that energy up. Like, and let's just lean into it. And my favorite part is Brian was at least semi-aware of the podcast because when we were trying to woo him to join the podcast, that was like, you always show up to a meeting with your things that you're willing to wiggle on and the things that you are willing to not budge on.
This was my favorite part.
And Brian told me, he goes, look, I don't think I'm gonna say wash your ass. Like, I just want to make sure everybody's like aware. Like, I know that you trade off and that's fine, but like if it's just I just don't think that I should. And I was like, hey, that's fine. I was like, we'll give you something else. Like maybe read a book, like whatever it is. Like you said, read a book that one time. That's your thing now. Like that.
It turned into like a 3-step process from one. Look at this collaboration.
It worked out. It just worked.
Look at this.
Great. Yeah. That was my favorite conversation. Just hearing his like, he wanted to try to be respectful of the bit on the phone, but he also was like, really didn't want to do it. Like, so it was just amazing. So, but gentlemen, that brings us to our 3-step process for success. Brian, kick us off with the first step.
Oh,
hey folks, if you're this whole episode, it's been great, and if there's one thing you can take away from it, there's a lot of stories from a lot of different places, and reading a book is a great way to get some of those stories, to be in another person's shoes. And hey, if you like movies, reading a book, it's like a movie in your head. Read a book.
Read a book.
Thank you, Little John. Yes,
right.
Thank you.
I love that. Our second step for success is to drink some water. Look, everybody, it's important that you stay hydrated. Your bones will love you. Your joints will love you. And plus, you'll just be able to stay a little bit more hydrated. So it's important to do that for your health, for yourself, and for others around you. Just drink some water. Mark?
Listen, the final step, as we exit out of here, I just want to play some tunes. You know what I mean? Just want to get us going. It's been a great episode, y'all. 100 episodes.
100.
It's been a hell of a ride. But for the 100th time, if not more,
the 100th time,
the best news that I can give you, the best advice that I can give you is to wash your ass. Okay? For the 100th time, I gotta tell you, whether you got it on the 5th time or you needed 99 and 100 to really get it through your thick ass skull, you gotta wash your ass. Okay?
Yeah.
Super important. You can't be sitting out here stinky dank, you know what I mean? You putting holes in your drawers, not using your lube for your towel dry because you ain't took a shower in 3 days. It has not seen moisture in 3 days because you refuse to wash your ass.
It's important.
And I'm upset about it. But I'm here to work with you through it. Us three. We will be here to work with you through it for 200 more episodes. You know what I mean? So wash your ass, baby. Wash your ass.
Incredible. Thank you all for joining us for our 100th episode of Films in Black and White. This has been an outstanding celebration. We are going to be back next week with a very special guest talking about the video game movie Uncharted.
Oh, I can't wait, y'all.
I'm very excited to talk about this with you all. But in the meantime and in the between time, stay safe, stay healthy. We love you and we appreciate you. We'll catch y'all next week.
It's your month and you know it, and you know it. And you know